Captain Zack Ryder guided his sleek exploration craft, the Odyssey, towards the shimmering green and blue world filling his view screen. He had been tasked by Earth Command to survey this uncharted planet at the edge of known space, a world never before visited by humans. As the Odyssey pierced the wispy clouds and swooped low over a vast forest canopy, Zack couldn't help but marvel at the raw, primordial beauty stretching out before him. Lush jungles and snaking silver rivers dominated the landscape, broken only by jutting black mountains that knifed towards the lavender sky. It was a world ripe for discovery. Zack set the Odyssey down on a broad, flat plain bordered by dense woodland. He was anxious to stretch his legs after the long journey. Leaving the ship, he stepped out onto springy blue-green grass, breathing deep the heady alien air, scented with foreign spices and tinged with ozone. A sense of exhilaration filled him, fueled by the thrill of exploration. Movement in the tree line caught his eye, and Zack tensed, hand dropping to the plasma blaster at his hip. He watched intently as a figure emerged from the shadows of the great trees. Zack's eyes widened. It was a young woman, lithe and otherworldly. Her skin shimmered an iridescent silver, her long hair the hue of polished onyx. High cheekbones framed large, almond-shaped eyes that sparkled like black opals. She was clad in a gossamer shift that seemed spun from starlight. As the alien girl approached with feline grace, Zack found himself captivated, barely able to breathe. She radiated an aura of raw energy, of power and majesty. When she spoke, her voice was achingly melodic. "Welcome, traveler from Earth," she said. "I am Lyra of the Arcadians. We have been expecting you." "You know of Earth?" Zack asked in wonder, finally finding his voice. "How?" Lyra smiled enigmatically as she came to stop an arm's length from Zack. Up close, her beauty was breathtaking. "We Arcadians have observed your kind for ages. You are newcomers to the galactic stage, but you have great potential. I have long wished to meet a human." She stretched out a delicate hand, her fingertips brushing Zack's bearded cheek. An almost electric tingle passed through him at her touch, sending his pulse racing. Her eyes sparkled with starlight. "Zack Ryder," he said by way of introduction, voice husky. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Lyra." "The pleasure is all mine," she purred. Again her fingers traced his cheek and jaw, the sensation strangely exhilarating. "I have waited eternities for this moment." As Lyra spoke, Zack felt a peculiar sensation wash over him, like a rush of heat followed by a surge of boundless energy. His cells seemed to shiver with elation and strength, his blood sparking in his veins. The feeling was startling in its intensity, and Zack nearly gasped aloud. "Did you feel the effects of this contact immediately, human?" Lyra asked, her face an inscrutable mask. Her obsidian eyes flashed. "The bonding of our energies, our life forces. I'm not certain," Zack said slowly, pulse still pounding in his ears. "Something definitely just happened, though." Lyra took a step back, disentangling her touch. Zack immediately mourned the loss of contact. The alien girl smiled slyly, a vulpine grin. "Then you have much to learn, Zack Ryder of Earth. Come, let me show you the wonders and secrets of my world." She turned and strode towards the tree line, casting a look over her shoulder that compelled Zack to follow. Captivated, intrigued, he fell into step behind her. Together they passed beneath the towering trees, dappled lavender light filtering down upon them. Zack fervently wished he could reach out and take Lyra's hand, initiate that thrilling energy exchange once more. His skin still tingled from her touch, but this was first contact with a new species. He had to take things slowly, carefully. Still, the vivacious alien girl filled his every thought as they ventured deeper into the alien forest. Little did Zack know, this encounter was only the beginning of an epic journey, one that would draw him closer to Lyra, unlock the secrets of an ancient cosmic power, and ultimately put them in the crosshairs of a terribly dangerous foe. The fate of both their worlds would soon hang in the balance. As Zack followed Lyra deeper into the alien forest, he couldn't help but marvel at the exotic flora towering around them. Massive ferns unfurled fronds the size of solar sails, while bioluminescent flowers cast soft pools of lavender and azure light upon the spongy turf. The warm, spiced air was alive with the calls and chitters of unseen creatures. Lyra moved through the undergrowth with effortless grace, her steps precise and purposeful. Zack had so many questions burning on his tongue, but before he could voice any of them, the alien girl spoke. "I know you must be curious about me and my people," she said, casting a look over her shoulder, obsidian eyes glinting. "The Arcadians are an ancient race, old when your ancestors were still climbing down from the trees. How have we never encountered your kind before?" Zack asked, ducking under a low-hanging branch laden with fist-sized crimson fruit. "We are watchers, observers," Lyra replied cryptically as she pushed aside a curtain of glossy green vines. "For eons, we've monitored younger races like your own, guiding from afar, nudging you towards enlightenment." She paused at the foot of a great onyx monolith, its surface inscribed with swirling silver hieroglyphs that made Zack's eyes water when he tried to focus on them. With a touch of Lyra's palm, the monolith shuddered and began to descend into the earth, revealing the hidden passageway. "Come," Lyra beckoned, her face limned by a pulsing emerald light emanating from the tunnel. "There is much I wish to show you." Zack followed without hesitation, drawn by both Lyra's magnetism and his own burning curiosity. The tunnel led deep underground, its walls carved with mesmerizing alien frescoes that seemed to depict Arcadian history. Zack yearned to stop and examine them further, but Lyra forged ahead with single-minded determination. Finally, the tunnel opened up into a vast subterranean chamber. Zack gasped in wonder, momentarily dumbstruck by the sight before him. Cyclopean columns of glittering black stone supported a soaring ceiling painted with constellations Zack had never seen. The air shimmered with coruscating currents of energy that made his skin prickle. "Behold," Lyra declared, sweeping her slender arm wide. "The repository of lost Arcadian knowledge and technology, the Chamber of Enlightenment." She led Zack deeper into the chamber, past towering alien machines that thrummed with barely restrained power, past luminous floating scrolls of golden filament that pulsed like living things. Finally, they came to a great shimmering sphere, its surface alive with flowing hieroglyphs. "This is the Orb of Confluence," Lyra said reverently, laying her palm upon its pearlescent surface. Her black eyes reflected its inner fire, a conduit through which my people's history, our very essence, flows. Through it, we are all connected, all one. Tentatively, hardly daring to breathe, Zack reached out to touch the orb. As his fingers brushed its strangely warm surface, he gasped as a surge of images and sensations flooded his mind. He saw galaxies whirling through the depthless void, felt the crackle of unimaginable energies, heard the whispered secrets of 1,000,000,000,000 stars. It was exhilarating, overwhelming, leaving him breathless and dizzy. Lyra's hand came to rest atop his where it pressed against the orb's surface. At her touch, the cascade of cosmic secrets receded like a tide, leaving Zack clear-headed once more. He gazed at the alien girl, a million new questions on his lips, only to find her staring back at him with an enigmatic smile. "Your kind have such potential," Lyra said, her fingers tightening on his. "The power and knowledge of the Arcadians lies before you, waiting to be unlocked. With my guidance, humanity can take its rightful place among the elder races." "Why me?" Zack asked hoarsely. "Why share these secrets with me?" Lyra leaned closer until the electric thrill of her nearness sent shivers racing down Zack's spine. Her obsidian gaze bored into his own. "There is a connection between us, Zack Ryder," she purred, her breath hot against his cheek. "Two life forces intertwined. Can you not feel it, burning in your blood and bones? You are meant for great things, human. Together, we shall achieve them." Just as Zack opened his mouth to respond to Lyra's tantalizing words, a deep, sonorous boom echoed through the Chamber of Enlightenment. The alien machines lining the walls flickered anxiously, and even the orb of confluence seemed to pulse with agitation. Lyra tensed, her sharp nails digging into the flesh of Zack's hand. "We are under attack," she hissed, obsidian eyes narrowing to dangerous slits. "The Zorgans have found us." "Zorgans?" Zack asked in alarm, adrenaline already starting to surge through his veins. "Who are they?" "A vicious, warlike race." Lyra spat as she pulled Zack away from the now madly pulsating orb. "They crave power and dominion above all else. For centuries, they've sought to steal Arcadian secrets in a bid to expand their cruel empire across the stars." Another boom rocked the chamber, showering them with dust and debris from above. Lyra cursed fluently in her alien tongue as she led Zack back towards the tunnel at a run. "They must have tracked my energy signature," she said grimly. "I was careless, too caught up in our meeting. Now they mean to take the repository by force." Emerging from the tunnel into the lush forest, Zack and Lyra skidded to a halt. The once peaceful alien vista was now alive with chaos and destruction. Bolts of searing crimson energy slashed down from the lavender sky as ominous black ships thundered overhead. Alien trees burst into flames, and geysers of earth erupted skyward as the deadly beams struck home. "This is only the vanguard," Lyra shouted over the cacophony. "The bulk of their invasion force won't be far behind." She unslung a sleek rifle from her back, the alien alloy glinting in the firelight. Zack reached for his own plasma blaster, thumbing off the safety. "We have to hold them off," Lyra declared, her face set in lines of grim determination. "The secrets held within the Chamber of Enlightenment cannot fall into Zorgan hands. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance." Side by side, Zack and Lyra charged into the maelstrom, weapons spitting lethal bolts of energy. Zorgan soldiers, hulking brutes clad in spiked black armor, surged forward to meet them. The air sang with the clash of weapons and the cries of the fallen. Zack fought with a desperate ferocity he'd never known before, his blaster seeming to move of its own accord. He cut down Zorgan after Zorgan, their black blood staining the once pristine earth. Beside him, Lyra was a blur of deadly motion, her alien rifle scything through the enemy ranks. And yet, for every Zorgan that fell, two more seemed to take its place. They came on in a relentless black tide, heedless of their losses, driven by a single-minded hunger for conquest. Zack and Lyra found themselves driven back, step by blood-soaked step. "There's too many of them," Zack shouted, his blaster growing hot in his hands from the constant firing. "We can't hold them back forever." "We must," Lyra cried, her eyes wild and fierce in the chaos. "If they take the chamber, all is lost." A Zorgan energy bolt sizzled past Zack's ear, close enough to singe his hair. He whirled, blasting the offending alien to smoldering ruin. But in that instant of distraction, another Zorgan leaped forward, its crackling blade slashing down towards Zack's unprotected back. "No!" Lyra screamed. She lunged, putting herself between Zack and the killing blow. The Zorgan blade bit deep into her shoulder, shearing through her iridescent flesh in a spray of silver blood. Roaring in mingled rage and anguish, Zack leveled his blaster and blew the Zorgan's head into oblivion. Catching Lyra as she fell, he pulled her close against his chest. "Why did you do that?" he demanded, his heart pounding with fear for her. "You're too important to lose," Lyra said through gritted teeth, silver blood seeping between her fingers where she clasped her wound. "You're the key, Zack. The key to everything." Before Zack could ask what she meant, another volley of energy beams rained down around them, throwing up gouts of scorched earth. In the distance, more Zorgan ships screamed through the skies. The battle was far from over. Jaw set with determination, Zack helped Lyra to her feet. Whatever the cost, whatever the odds, they had to keep fighting. The fate of both their peoples, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. Zack and Lyra limped back into the shelter of the forest, the sounds of battle still raging behind them. Lyra's face was drawn with pain, her shoulder a mess of scorched flesh and silver blood. Zack's heart ached to see her so grievously wounded. "We can't keep this up," he panted, lungs burning from the acrid smoke that choked the air. "The Zorgans are too many, too relentless." Lyra shook her head stubbornly, obsidian eyes feverish but determined. "We cannot yield, Zack. Too much is at stake." She staggered and would have fallen had Zack not caught her about the waist. He held her close, the electric thrill of her touch still palpable even through the haze of exhaustion and fear. "There must be another way," he insisted. "Some advantage we can press, some weapon we can bring to bear." Lyra was silent for a long moment, her quicksilver brow furrowed in thought. Then, slowly, a glimmer of hope kindled in her obsidian eyes. "There may be one thing," she said slowly, "a long-lost artifact of immense power, hidden deep within the Chamber of Enlightenment. The Zorgans seek it above all else." "What is it?" Zack asked eagerly. "The celestial conduit," Lyra replied, her voice hushed with reverence. "An ancient device capable of harnessing the fundamental energies of the cosmos. With it, one could reshape the very fabric of reality." Zack's heart pounded at the implications. Could it turn the tide against the Zorgans? Lyra nodded grimly. "It could indeed. But there's a catch. The conduit is locked away behind a series of complex puzzles and traps, designed to test the wisdom and worthiness of any who seek its power. Only by solving these trials can it be reached." "Then that's what we have to do," Zack declared, his resolve hardening. "We have to get to the conduit before the Zorgans do." Lyra gazed up at him, her eyes shining with a mix of admiration and something deeper, more intense. "You are indeed the key, Zack Ryder. Your courage, your determination. It's just as the prophecies foretold." She extricated herself from his arms and stood tall despite her wound, a fierce, proud tilt to her chin. "Come then. Let us brave the trials together and secure the conduit. The fate of worlds depends on us." Zack nodded, squaring his shoulders. Side by side, he and Lyra plunged back into the tunnel, descending once more into the hidden depths of the Chamber of Enlightenment. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, solving mind-bending alien puzzles and dodging deadly traps, Zack couldn't help but marvel at Lyra's brilliant mind and indomitable spirit. Even wounded, she pressed on with unwavering determination, her keen intellect making short work of even the most complex challenges. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of narrow escapes and breathless moments, they found themselves standing before a massive circular door inscribed with pulsing silver runes. Lyra ran her fingers over the intricate patterns, her face rapt with concentration. "This is it," she breathed. "The final lock. The conduit lies just beyond." Under her deft touch, the runes flared brilliantly, and with a deep, resonant boom, the great door swung open. Zack and Lyra stepped through, finding themselves in a small domed chamber. And there, hovering in the center in a nimbus of coruscating energy, was the celestial conduit. It was a thing of breathtaking beauty, a crystalline sphere shot through with swirling filaments of light. It seemed to hum with barely restrained power, setting Zack's teeth on edge and making his hair stand on end. Lyra approached it reverently, her eyes wide with awe. "With this, we can banish the Zorgans and secure peace for both our peoples." She reached out to take the conduit, but just as her fingers brushed its shimmering surface, a harsh, guttural voice rang out. "Step away from the artifact, Arcadian filth." Zack and Lyra whirled to see a hulking Zorgan warrior looming in the doorway, a crackling energy blade in his clawed grip. His eyes burned with malevolent triumph. "The conduit is ours," the Zorgan snarled. "As is your doom." He charged forward, blade slashing down in a murderous arc. Zack leaped to meet him, plasma blaster spitting fire. The battle for the fate of worlds had begun in earnest. Zack and the Zorgan warrior clashed in a furious whirlwind of plasma bolts and flashing blade. The air sizzled with the discharge of their weapons, the chamber ringing with the sounds of their titanic struggle. Zack fought with a desperate intensity, driven by the knowledge that everything hinged on this moment. He couldn't let the Zorgon get past him, couldn't let the alien fiend lay a single claw on Lyra or the celestial conduit. And yet, for all his skill and determination, Zack was hard-pressed to hold his own against the Zorgon's relentless onslaught. The alien was a juggernaut of sinewy muscle and cruel cunning, his every blow backed by centuries of merciless conquest. Zack cried out in pain as the Zorgon's blade slipped past his guard, carving a searing line across his chest. He stumbled back, the acrid stench of his own scorched flesh filling his nostrils. The Zorgon loomed over him, eyes glinting with cruel triumph. "Pathetic human," the alien sneered. "Your kind are weak, unworthy. You will be ground to dust beneath the might of the Zorgon Empire." "Never," Lyra cried. She leaped forward, the celestial conduit clutched tight in one hand. With the other, she lashed out at the Zorgon, a bolt of blinding white energy erupting from her open palm. The blast caught the Zorgon square in the chest, hurling him back against the chamber wall with bone-crushing force. He slid to the ground, his armor smoking, his eyes wide with shock and pain. Lyra stood over him, the conduit pulsing with restrained power in her grip. Her eyes blazed with righteous fury. "You will never defeat us," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Not while we stand together, human and Arcadian, united as one." She reached down, helping Zack back to his feet. He leaned on her, dizzy from pain and blood loss, but resolute nonetheless. Together, they turned to face the fallen Zorgon. But the chamber shook with a sudden, terrible impact. Dust rained down from the ceiling and cracks raced along the ancient walls. Zack and Lyra exchanged a look of horrified realization. The battle above. Lyra breathed. "It goes poorly for your people." Zack's heart clenched with fear, not for himself, but for his fellow humans fighting and dying in the skies above Arcadia. He keyed his comm, hailing the Odyssey. "Captain Ryder to the Odyssey. Come in. What's your status?" A burst of static, then a panicked voice filled the chamber. "Captain, it's chaos up here. The Zorgons have brought in a massive dreadnought. It's tearing through our defenses like tissue paper. We can't hold out much longer." Zack's jaw tightened with grim resolve. He looked to Lyra, saw the same determination mirrored in her obsidian eyes. "Beam me up," he ordered, "and alert Earth Command. Tell them we need every ship, every soldier. This is humanity's stand. This is where we fight for the fate of the galaxy." Lyra gripped his hand, the conduit pulsing between their entwined fingers. "Go," she urged. "Lead your people to victory. I will use the conduit to turn the tide of battle on the ground." Zack pulled her close, their lips meeting in a brief, fierce kiss. "Fight well, my starlight," he whispered against her mouth. "I'll see you on the other side." Then the transporter beam took him, and he was whisked away to the chaos above. Lyra watched him go, love and fear warring in her heart. Then, squaring her shoulders, she turned to face the oncoming storm of Zorgon invaders, the celestial conduit blazing like a newborn star in her hands. Zack materialized on the bridge of the Odyssey, the ship shuddering under the onslaught of Zorgon fire. Crimson warning lights flashed and klaxons blared, the acrid stench of smoke and fried circuitry filling the air. "Captain on the bridge," his first officer shouted over the din. Zack leaped into action, his pain and exhaustion forgotten in the heat of battle. He took the helm, his hands flying over the controls as he wrenched the Odyssey into a desperate, evasive spiral. "Damage report," he barked. "Shields at 20%, weapons systems critical." The tactical officer reported, panic edging her voice. "That dreadnought is tearing us apart." Zack gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The Zorgon dreadnought filled the view screen, a monstrous construct of jagged black metal and pulsing red energy. It dwarfed the Odyssey, its weapons hammering the human ship with relentless fury. But Zack refused to give in to despair. He thought of Lyra, of her fierce courage and indomitable spirit. He thought of Earth, of the billions of lives depending on him. He would not fail them. He could not. Reroute all power to forward shields and thrusters, he commanded. Arm the quantum torpedoes and prepare to fire on my mark. The crew rushed to obey, hope kindling in their eyes at the steel in their captain's voice. The Odyssey surged forward, her engines screaming as she hurtled towards the Zorgan dreadnought. "Captain, the Earth fleet is jumping in," the comms officer cried, jubilation in his voice. "Reinforcements are on the way." Zack's heart soared as a massive wormhole burst open and a phalanx of gleaming Earth ships poured forth, weapons blazing. They fell upon the Zorgan fleet like avenging angels, tearing into the alien ships with relentless determination. Seizing the moment, Zack brought the Odyssey in close to the dreadnought, so close he could see the hateful glow of the Zorgan command deck. "Fire quantum torpedoes," he roared. Full spread. A volley of incandescent projectiles erupted from the Odyssey's forward tubes, streaking towards the Zorgan flagship in coruscating ribbons of light. They slammed into the dreadnought's hull, puncturing its shields and burrowing deep into its innards before detonating with cataclysmic force. The dreadnought reeled, great gouts of flame and debris erupting from its ruptured hull. Secondary explosions rippled through its superstructure as critical systems overloaded and failed. With a final titanic blast, the mighty warship broke apart, the shockwave scattering the remaining Zorgan ships like leaves before a hurricane. A cheer went up from the Odyssey's crew as the Zorgan fleet turned tail and fled, disappearing into the void. The bridge rang with shouts of joy and relief, crewmen embracing and weeping at the sudden, miraculous reprieve. Zack sagged back in his chair, a smile of weary triumph tugging at his lips. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had stood firm and emerged victorious. But his thoughts quickly turned to the planet below, to Lyra. How did the battle fare on the surface? Was she safe? Had the conduit turned the tide, as she hoped? As if in answer to his unspoken questions, the comms crackled to life, and a familiar, beloved voice filled the bridge. "Zack, can you hear me?" "Lyra," Zack cried, leaping to his feet. "Are you all right? What happened down there?" "We did it, Zack." Lyra's voice was jubilant, suffused with triumph. The conduit unleashed an energy wave that swept the planet, disabling every Zorgan in its path. "Arcadia is free." Tears of joy stung Zack's eyes. It was over. It was finally over. "I'm coming, Lyra," he said. "I'm coming home to you." The Odyssey set down amidst the ruins of the battlefield, smoke still rising from the scorched earth in lazy spirals. But amidst the destruction, new life was already blooming, green shoots pushing up through the ash, nurtured by the life-giving energies of the celestial conduit. Zack strode down the ramp, his eyes seeking one figure amidst the milling crowd of Arcadian survivors and human soldiers. Then he saw her, a vision of breathtaking beauty even in her battered battle gear. "Lyra," he cried, breaking into a run. She turned, her face lighting up with incandescent joy. They crashed together, arms encircling, lips meeting in a passionate, life-affirming kiss. Around them, human and Arcadian voices rose in cheers of celebration and unity. The two races, forged together in the crucible of war, now stood side by side as allies, as friends. "A new era has dawned," Lyra murmured, gazing deep into Zack's eyes. "An era of peace, of discovery, of two peoples walking the stars together." "Together," Zack agreed, love and hope burning bright in his heart. "Always together." And hand in hand, the human and the Arcadian turned to face the rising sun, ready to embrace the glorious future that awaited them all.